Morning. Our question for this week. As believers, how much should we be watchful for eschatological events happening in the world around us in light of Matthew 25:13? So the question is, how much should we look around us at what's happening in culture? So we see the waywardness of culture, we see depravity, we see horrible things happening, we see events politically, we see crisis in Israel, we see conflict in the Arab world and between the Arab and Jewish worlds, we see just the Middle East on fire at large and all these kinds of things. And how much should we be looking at these things and mapping them onto eschatological events that would sort of make us go, okay, the coming of the Lord is near, it's near, it's near. Let me answer it this way very specifically to the question, because we could get off in eschatology and it would take a lot more than a Thought for the Week video. So let's answer specifically, what does it mean for us to be watchful, and how does this map on with Matthew 25:13? Matthew 25:13 reads this way: "Watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." Now, what's the context? We have to go back to verse 1 of Matthew 25 to understand what's meant by watch, therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. The day nor the hour of what? So we go back to verse 1, and we're going to read Matthew 25, verse 1 through 12. "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom." Now I'm going to show you carefully. This is a 1st or 2nd century Herodian lamp that I bought from a reliable antiquities dealer in the old city of Jerusalem. And you can actually see some burn marks on the snout of the lamp still. This is the kind of lamp that they would have carried. This lamp somewhat like this. I actually, in a different part of my office, have a Roman lamp from the 1st and 2nd century. Herodian lamp. It's a Roman lamp. And so they're carrying something like this, and he's saying that they went out to meet the bridegroom. They take their lamps by night. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all became drowsy and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, 'Here's the bridegroom! Come out to meet him!' Then all those virgins rose, trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said to the wise, 'Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out.' But the wise answered, saying, Since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. For while they were going to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other virgins came also, saying, 'Lord, Lord, open to us.' But he answered, 'Truly, I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour." The day nor the hour of what? Well, the context here is the Olivet Discourse. There's a series of parables that are told, or stories and different illustrations within the Olivet Discourse that speak about the return of Jesus. And so the watching is regarding the return of Christ, and you have this picture of people who didn't tend to their lamps. They weren't vigilant with their lives. They weren't vigilant and ready and waiting for Jesus to return. So what does it mean to say, "Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour"? Is it watching like looking out the window? Is it watching like reading the tea leaves? Is it watching like interpreting eschatological events? What does it mean? And I think what we have to recognize is that this kind of watch in regard to what's called the parousia, or the return of Christ, is used often of a particular sense. It's already a term I mentioned a moment ago, vigilance. It's kind of an attentiveness of life. So to be watchful means an attentiveness or a vigilance. It's not an interpretation. It's not a kind of grid that you put up. It's not a decoding. It's an orientation of life. With that in view, let me give you 6 points that being watchful means. Here's the first one. To be watchful is a life orientation, not a study of timelines and symbology. I say that because sometimes that question, maybe not intentionally, but can sort of mean, shouldn't we be looking at current events and then interpreting them? Should we be thinking about who the Antichrist is and thinking, oh, it might be this person. Let's interpret it that way. Is that what it means to be watchful? No, it doesn't mean interpreting symbology, and it doesn't mean interpreting present events in a particular or timelines in a way. In fact, the word vigilance there, or watchful, here is used as well in when the disciples fall asleep in the Garden of Gethsemane. And he says, can't you just watch and pray with me? In other words, can't you stay awake and be vigilant? It's actually used earlier in chapter 24 for the idea of being awake in verse 36, which actually leads to our next point. But so the first is to be watchful is a life orientation, not study of timelines or symbology. Secondly, to be watchful is to prepare, not to predict. Matthew 24:36. But concerning that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. But the Father only. The word for watchful actually shows up later in Matthew 24. But here he's making the point, just you don't know the day or the hour. In fact, not even the Son knows the day or the hour. So the Son of Man doesn't even know the day or the hour. And yet, why would we spend our time trying to predict the day or the hour? Our job isn't prediction, our job is preparation, which has to do with our life orientation and the way in which we approach living our lives, knowing that we have to always have the ethical posture of being ready for Christ's return. What does that mean? It means a kind of life that is open and receptive to Him, anticipatory of Him. To be watchful, number 3, is to focus on our ethics, not our eschatology. So later on in chapter 24, verse 45 through 51, we read, "Who then is the faithful and wise servant, whom his master has set over his household to give them their food at the proper time? Blessed is that servant whom his master will find doing so when he comes. Truly, I say to you, he will set him over all his possessions. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." He's talking about the ethical life of a servant. He has to be the kind of person that he ought to be, who manages things well. So the focus isn't on our understanding of timeline eschatology. Our focus is on our ethics, and that's what it means to be prepared for Jesus' return. To be watchful, number 4, is not to reverse the hermeneutical process. What do I mean? It's not to reverse the hermeneutical process. That is, I'm supposed to come to the text and I work out from the text to culture. I don't come to the culture and work back. I don't look, see, this is what happens, and it's happened all throughout human history in some ways, is people begin to say the return of Christ is here, 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 and we don't know, because you could tag it to a host of different events that if you were alive during those specific times, you would have felt like that. That's actually in some ways the nature of the revelation of the New Testament, to keep you always anticipating. And it's why Paul conceived he was living in the last days, because he was supposed to live always at the ready. But again, to live at the ready means to be ethically prepared for the return of Christ. It doesn't mean to be one who's looking and predicting the events and working from culture, from the artifacts that are happening in culture back into the text. If that's the case, you're just going to take Revelation, for example. You'll just keep reinterpreting. And that's precisely what's happened in the hermeneutics of Revelation through the history of the church. Number 5, to be watchful is to keep the lamps of our own faith burning, not to focus on when the world will burn. Again, the context of that parable of the virgins, what's the focus of being watchful? Your own lamp. It's not, when's destruction coming to the world? It's, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you prepared? Have you given your life to Christ? Are you walking with him? Is perseverance the test of reality in your own faith and how you orient your life? That's the question. And then finally, number 6, to be watchful is to embrace that we will be surprised. And here is where the other use of the word that is for watchful there shows up. So in Matthew 24:42 through 44, we read, therefore, stay awake. Stay awake. Be aware. Be ready. Be, in that sense, watchful. It's gregoreo. It's the same word that's used for watch down in verse 13. Therefore, stay awake. Be vigilant. For you don't know on what day your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore, you also must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. So to be watchful, in summary, is not about prediction, and it's not about interpreting events. It is about a life orientation that is pursuing Christ, keeping your lamp burning, right? Orienting your life in attentiveness and vigilance to him so that you're not caught unawares. You're not somebody who's sleeping. You're not somebody who is showing that they're not a real believer. Instead, you're showing yourself to be a true believer. That's what it means here to be watchful. So anyway, that's my answer to the question. How much should we watch for eschatological events? I actually think that we need to spend less time thinking about predicting everything around us and more time focused on what it means for us to be obedient right now. Right now. The Bible is an instruction book from God about how our lives are to be lived at one level. It's a revelation of him and the big arc of history, creation, fall, redemption, recreation, and how our story fits in that. It's not that we shouldn't think about the end times, and it's not that we shouldn't think about eschatology, but we need to think about them as motivating factors to be obedient now and focus on what we're doing now. We don't need to spend our time trying to map it out, chart it out, and figure it out and predict it. So I'm not suggesting that's the motive of the question at all. I don't know that that's the motive of the question by any means. I just think that we can get off thinking too much about predicting things and not enough about preparing, when the text about being watchful with the virgins is all about preparation. I hope that blesses you and is helpful. Take care.